So this is the story of the boat that we pasted in 2014. Actually, when I did the Women Are Heroes project, which was between 2007 and 2010, I've always promised the women that I'll make their story travel, which I did on trains, on buses, on any kind of locomotion I could find, but I couldn't do it on a boat. And it's only years later that someone came to me and said, hey, I have a contact in Le Havre, which is the largest port in France, and maybe they could help you do it. So I went there and I met the dockers, and the dockers who really control the port, one of them knew my work and said, hey, we can help you. And I was like, well, but do you guys own a boat? They're like, no, we don't own a boat, but we can help you with the containers and we can find containers for you. And then you ask one of the 3 largest companies in the world if they can leave you some space on one of the boats that would travel. And so that's what we did. And I sent a letter and I said, this is a project I want to do. I want to paste the eyes of a woman from Kenya that always wanted to travel and put it on any of the boats that would travel. And they told me, well, we have one of those really large boats, which is called the Magellan, which is 370 meters long, which is big, like 14,000 containers. And we would only do one facade of it, but still. So we had to even create our own software to print the files, which is like a giant puzzle of thousands of pieces of paper that we would then paste on containers on the ground, on the port. For 14 days, we pasted with the dockers. And even their wives came and helped. And if you know the world of the dockers, there's no woman in this world. And that was, for some of the women that came, the first time ever they had walked on the port, even if they live hundreds of meters or kilometers from it, in Le Havre. So we pasted that. And we started installing it when the boat came at the port and putting the containers, and that's the job of the dockers. They take all their cranes and they start installing it on the boat. And normally it was supposed to go a bit faster, but after a couple hours, one of them come to me and say, hey, look, there's a problem. We won't be finishing loading before the nightfall. But the problem for us is that I couldn't get any photos if the boat leaves when it's night. So at 7 o'clock, they come to me, the night was about to fall around 8, and they say, hey, if you don't take a photo now, and if the boat leaves at midnight, you might never, have a shot of it. So I take a shot. One of the dockers go and ask all the dockers to clear the shot, and I've never seen this. He just said, hey guys, can you clear the frame? And then suddenly all the cranes, all the, spider kind of, machines they have to load containers leaves the frame, so I can take photo for 20 minutes. I'll never forget that because it was, kind of amazing to see a group of people so tight together that in a heartbeat they could just clear an entire port. And then they keep on loading. And at some point they say, look, now it looks like we're gonna finish, sometime in the middle of the night. You should call the company and ask them to hold the boat at deck couple more hours so that you could shoot it at 5 in the morning when the light comes out. But remember, that would cost them a fortune. So, so I called and it was already 10 o'clock, and then someone passed me to someone, then I got called back later. And I speak to the woman who's in charge of the whole company, and I say, look, if the boat leaves at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., we'll never have any photo of it because it goes at sea and we cannot follow it, and there's a lot of storms coming up. So we've looked with the captain, we don't know how we're gonna get a photo. And it's stunning now on the port, except that, it could be on the port, it doesn't look like it's at sea. And she said, well, there's already 2 other boats at sea, it's kind of complicated, but she called me back an hour later and said, I cleared it for you. You can take your photo at 5 in the morning. So we didn't sleep the whole night, waited. And as soon as there was an ounce of light, the boat left, and then we started running along the, the coast to photograph it before we let it go. So that was the last time I saw the boat, and we edited a little film with some friends that's on, easy to find online. And that's it. I thought, I'll never hear about the boat. It's going and it's going to cross the entire world all the way to Malaysia. A couple of months later, I go back to Le Havre and I show to the dockers the little film. So we just, in a bar, like put a little widescreen, project the film. And at the end, one guy comes with his bag like that and walks out and say, hey, I think it was your boat, but it met some migrants at sea. I was like, oh, really? What? I have never heard anything like this. I think so, but I'm not sure. So I called the company. They say, no, we don't know. I called other people at the dockers. They didn't know. And then we remembered we had the email of the assistant of the captain in case we could find them at sea one day. So we emailed them. And she replied with tons of photos and said, oh yes, when the boat was close to the coast of Libya, we were the closest boat to one boat that was in distress call with around 200 migrants. And we've been asked by the Italian guard to rescue them and then drop them in Syracuse, which is a port in Sicily that could welcome a boat like that, because it's not an easy boat to stop. And they actually had to stop the entire boat at sea to try to get close to the small boat because there was a big storm coming. And when I saw those photos of those people entering inside the eye and then get dropped there, and then I think it's the Wall Street Journal who made a big article and find the people and where they came from and where they was going and, cut out all the story. It made me realize how I don't have any control on the storytelling of the work of the images that I create, because then they go on to their own life, and sometimes their own life gets more interesting than what I had planned for them, like which was to take a photo of the boat leaving at sea. So it's a story I'll never forget, because while I was walking on Ellis Island in New York, on what was the island that had welcomed 12 million immigrants coming to America, I didn't know that my boat was meeting people in the current days that are trying to reach Europe where there's no more Ellis Island, and that, in Syracuse or in Lampedusa and all these islands that have to improvise themselves to welcome, migrants or not. It was definitely a huge a story that I'll never forget, and that had pushed me to go back there and explore more, and then started the big project on immigration.